Okay, hello everybody, and happy International Chardonnay Day. We're back for this week's live stream. As you know, some of you that have been joining us now for the last few weeks, we're doing these wine chats online whilst we're unable, sadly, to offer you tastings at our tasting room in Margaret River. Hopefully we'll be reopening soon, but in the meantime, welcome joining us. Thank you, I've already got some likes, that's lovely. I love it when you send likes and hearts, and I know there's somebody out there. Send us some comments. For those of you that are new, I'm Wendy, and this is my husband Barry, and we are the owners and founders of Passel Estate Vineyard and Tasting Room in Margaret River. So here we're going to celebrate International Chardonnay Day by drinking lots of Chardonnay, which is very exciting because it's my favourite varietal.
Empty at the moment,
empty at the moment, not for long. And we had a little bit of a discussion because we're going to treat you today to a vertical. We're going to be talking about both our delicious 2016 Margaret River Chardonnay and also our brand new pre-release 2017 Margaret River Chardonnay. And Margaret River is, of course, the queen of, Chardonnay is the queen of Margaret River. And so we discussed, do we both have both, or do we have one of each? And I was quite keen that we both have both. But reason has prevailed, and Barry is going to be tasting and talking primarily about the 2016, and I'm going to be talking about the 2017, but I might have a little smell and a little taste of Barry's 16 while I'm at it. And so hello everybody, hi David, hi Rochelle, lovely to hear from you, hi Stepan. And you've got a glass of our Chardonnay in hand, that's wonderful. Let me put a glass in Barry's hand and he can start talking a little bit about 2016 season in Margaret River.
Yeah, so Chardonnay is a dangerous thing to have in this household if you're me, mainly because it's by far Wendy's favourite varietal. So come between Wendy and the bottle of Chardonnay is actually quite dangerous.
Absolutely.
But from our point of view, Margaret River is rightly famous for its Chardonnay. It is certainly the white varietal that has made the region very, very famous. I think that the view held. See, that's already gone.
No, I'm just smelling it. I'm just smelling it.
It's Margaret River's style of Chardonnay is probably the closest, and this is coming from no less of an authority than Janice Robinson of the FT, but she visited Margaret River, I think it was last year, was, I think, probably one of her first visits to the region, wrote an absolutely wonderful article about how close the style of Margaret River Chardonnay is to top-end Burgundy. And, I have to confess that I wasn't always a huge fan of New World Chardonnay until I started tasting Margaret River Chardonnays. I'd always found them, as I think a lot of people did, slightly over-oaked and too woody. And that's just not the style of Margaret River. And like we were talking when we spoke about the other varietals like Syrah and Sauvignon Blanc, that's really all about climate. So our winemaker, Bruce Jukes, I was going through one of his vintage notes from the 16 vintage on Chardonnay, sort of in coming up to this live stream. And his final comment at the end of the vintage report was that I'm a very happy winemaker, and that's because of the climate and the soils of Margaret River. So no different with Chardonnay, and in particular because of Chardonnay. Margaret River produces this wonderful fruity, but also very fresh, acidic, if you like, that's capable of taking a bit of malolactic fermentation, secondary ferment, which really adds a huge amount of complexity to the wine, as does the oak that we use. And for 16 was a wonderful vintage for Chardonnay and Margaret River. It really was. It was a wonderful vintage for the reds as well, but in particular for Chardonnay. And we did particularly well that year, where the 16 Chardonnay took 95 points from Halliday. It got 90 points from Robert Parker, and it's the closest we've come to winning a trophy, where it came down to the final two, us and actually another Margaret River Chardonnay, for the trophy of best white wine and show in the Australia and New Zealand Boutique Wine Show in Sydney that year. So we're very proud of it. It's a beautiful wine. in terms of what it's like, it's just that absolutely classic Margaret River nose. It's stone fruit. It's sort of peaches, but there's definitely citrus there. There's freshness there, but there's creaminess. Even on the nose, you have the creaminess, and then when you taste it,
you're going to share that with me.
Wow, it's just a lovely, lovely creaminess.
We're
but
married.
Still very
we
fresh.
Can share this. Social distance.
And sort of we have the advantage, of course, of knowing exactly when that wine went through in terms of being made, but it involves quite a lot of outstanding new French oak, the same oak barrels that they would use, making white Burgundy. And also, there's a little bit on each year that we do this, but in 16, it was about a third of the batch went through a secondary ferment, really just to give it that lovely creaminess, that character that people associate with really good Chardonnay. But never so much that it overwhelms the wine. And that's Bruce and Remy's philosophy coming through in terms of winemaking again. Respect the fruit, respect the work that's gone in the vineyard, and just basically don't overwork it, don't do too much to it. Let the fruit speak, and that's also the philosophy of Passel Estate.
And I can see a lot of you are drinking the 16, which is really cool, and I agree with all of you, it's delicious. And thank you, Stepan, who's saying 90 from Parker is epic. We also actually got 90 from Parker for our 17, which I'm dying to open. Can I open mine and start talking a bit about this?
Yeah, please do.
In fact, why don't you do the honours? Barry talked a bit about the market, the terroir and the general climate conditions in Margaret River being so perfect for this varietal. Oh, hi, Jodie, you're also saying it's delicious, thank you. 2017 was actually quite a different season, a growing season to 2016. It certainly had its challenges. It was a very cool, slow season. There was a lot of rain, and so a lot of hard work in the vineyard to make sure that our fruit stayed beautifully healthy, stayed dry, and ripened to perfection through some much longer hang times than we really used to seeing. We had all sorts of challenges, but the ultimate prize at the end of that was really beautiful fruit qualities, really lovely, natural, quite high acidity when we picked compared to 16, and just a perfectly structured fruit. And actually, again, when we were chatting to Bruce and Remy, as we always do, of course, throughout the year as we're making the wines and talking about the fruits, they were very excited by the 2017 vintage, and they were comparing it to earlier vintages in Margaret River as being a really fantastic one for the Chardonnay, despite the hard work we had to go through to get it. So this is the 2017, obviously a year younger, made in a very similar way, although with that acidity on harvest. We were looking very carefully at the secondary fermentation, which of course we do to slightly soften that acidity. I should be very clear, we definitely want to do that because we're trying to create a beautifully textured, beautifully rounded wine with all the fruit characteristics and the oak characteristics and the acidity and the minerality, all in a beautiful imbalance. Barry's dying to say something. What are you trying to...
I just remember that conversation standing by one of the big steel tanks, which the wine had come out of barrel, and we're just finishing it off before we bottled it into these huge steel tanks in Bruce's sort of winemaking room. And we were tasting this exact wine, and
this one, mine, 17. Oh, yours, okay, 16.
And the word that came through there from Wendy was exactly the word he used, which is balance. Everything is balanced, and that's really what you're looking for. You want all of those elements in there, but you want them to be balanced.
So I was going to say that about the malo. There's an increasing fashion for people, some winemakers and some producers, not favouring doing the secondary fermentation, providing a sort of leaner, more acidic style, perhaps closer to a Chablis than the sort of Burgundy Chardonnay that this approximates to. And so we're also very conscious of not letting that malolactic fermentation go too far. So all of the beautiful, rounded and textural notes you get in this wine are coming from the oak and coming from the fruit, because we don't take the malo all the way. We don't let it get to those compounds at the far end, which start introducing the butterscotch and the heavy buttery notes. So this is still hopefully many of you that are drinking it. I know it's not yet released, but we did have a special 6-pack celebration, which is still available if anybody wants to have a little look after this and go online and purchase it. There it is. That's how you get your hands on this beautiful wine at the moment. It is really fresh, really structured, great minerality, but still absolutely fruit forward, like all of the wines that we try to. This is our philosophy. We strive to produce fruit forward wines that speak of Passel Estate and that beautiful environment we grow in Margaret River.
I might taste it if you're not going to.
I'll taste it. So have I not tasted it yet? It's because I've still been drinking the 16, so I better taste it. Okay, so I don't know if any of you are drinking. Yes, you're all drinking the 16 as far as I can see, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. Actually, while I'm tasting it, David's asking us a question about the clones.
I saw the question about the clones, yeah. So we do use gingin, interesting enough, and we'll sort of talk about this in the context of what we're very excited about to sort of speak about at the end. But gingin is not the only clone that they use for Chardonnay and Margaret River, but it does do exceptionally well, which is odd because it's not a clone that does well in Burgundy, where it's from. It produces almost a slightly banana-y element in the Burgundy climate, whereas in Margaret Rivers, for whatever reason, the soils and the climate just seem to suit that clone perfectly, and it produces these wonderful fruity but still sort of stone fruit and really fresh wines. But as I was saying, it's not the only clone that's now being used, and a number of the estates have also planted what is essentially, I guess, the dominant clone used for Great Burgundy, like Massot and Chassagne-Montrachet, is Dijon 95. And very often it's a mixture of different clones that they would use, but that would be the dominant clone in Burgundy. And we're seeing quite a bit of that in Margaret River now as well. And then there are some other ones as well that people use. There are some very interesting tastings where you can do single clone tasting.
Yes, some of the bigger estates.
Voyager Estate does an outstanding one, and it's fascinating to see the difference that clone can make to taste and wine, even in the same year and in the same climate.
And so I guess to slightly answer your question, David, a predominantly gingin clone for this, but what's quite exciting, which Barry was alluding to, and I was going to talk about it a bit later, but I'll talk about it now, is that we've actually extended the vineyard, the Chardonnay vineyard, and we've planted a whole new block of Chardonnay. That was done about 3 years ago. So we haven't yet been using the fruit from that block in our wine because it is still young and the canopy is still developing. So whilst the fruit is delicious, it's a bit of inconsistency in terms of ripening because we haven't got that full canopy cover yet. So we're currently selling that fruit to other vineyards. But what we planted there was gingin and the Dijon 95 that Barry's talked about. And we're very excited. We're hoping that possibly vintage 2021, if we're lucky, we're probably going to get a small crop of consistent fruit because it's still such a young vine, but it is growing so beautifully, and the soils there are, in Bruce's words again, Christmas cake for Chardonnay, is what he calls our block. We may even produce a limited batch of reserve Chardonnay from the new block in 2021. So watch this space. But yes, this one predominantly a gingin, and
we were hopeful of. There was an outside chance that we would be able to make some wine of the quality that we would be prepared to put into a Passel Estate bottle this year, but it just wasn't quite there, unfortunately, from the new block. It will almost certainly be there, and that's not that they're not producing fruit. They are, and when you see, it's quite interesting going through that block, seeing the bunches of grapes, because going back to David's question about clones, the clones produce noticeably different bunch shapes and grape sizes. So on a gingin clone, one of the features of the clone is that you get these very small berries and much bigger berries, sort of on the same bunch of grapes,
which makes it hellish to harvest.
They're all sort of ripening at different paces, and that's one of the reasons why it produces this amazing complex Chardonnay. Yes. Whereas Dijon has that, but to a much lesser extent.
It's got lovely characteristics, lovely flavoursome characteristics.
Yeah. And David was asking whether there's any particular clone that gives rise to that, what they call that struck match version that's famous for Chablis. And
I don't know.
I'm not sure whether which one does that, if it is a clonal issue, but certainly 95 has more minerality to it. And that's really what it gives a wine. It gives it that minerally characteristic to which is so lovely in Chardonnay. That's really coming from 95, although it is there, of course, with the gingin as well. It's all Chardonnay, ultimately.
The acidity and the structure, exactly. Yeah. And hi, Farhana, thank you. You're saying you love our Chardonnay. It's so nice to see all the comments coming in. Keep them coming in. And I will try and, as they scroll up my screen, try and answer them while I'm also enjoying the Chardonnay and chatting to Barry about it. I think David also asked a question that has gone off the screen now, but he was asking how much of this did we produce. So, we're a small estate, as you all know, and we only make across the entire range, including, the reserve, about 1,500 dozen each vintage. And so for the Chardonnay, it's, it varies a little bit season by season, but it's anything between 250 and 300 cases, dozens a year. And I think the 2017 is about 250 cases. The 2016 was a bigger run. It was about 300 cases. So this is small. And so it's rare and it's beautiful. And you should get your hands on it before it goes.
and a lot of the reason for that is crop yield. We've had probably until this last harvest, the 4 harvests that preceded it were some of the coolest that had been in Margaret River for a long time. That's produced outstanding Chardonnay, outstanding Sauv Blanc, and for the wine producers who have been able to allow the reds to develop fully on the vines, it's produced outstanding reds as well, because of the long hang times and the allowing the grapes really to develop all of their characteristics over a longer period of time and retain a lot of the wonderful sort of flavors and aromas that they lose sometimes in the warmer years. But it has produced some absolutely outstanding Chardonnay, but it has also translated into lower yield across all of the varietals.
2017, yes, it was tough for a lot of people.
Well,
you see, we were having to drop a lot of fruit to make sure that the fruit stayed dry and didn't clump together and encourage disease. So we were really on a bit of a knife point trying to manage that, so that we were keeping fruit from disease, but protecting it from birds. The birds were under a lot of pressure. They hadn't got the Mary blossoms. And ensuring, therefore, that we had quality fruit across the entire harvest. So I think everybody had a lower yield, but it's a yield to be treasured. 2017, despite it being hard for all of us producers, is definitely a vintage to look out for, I think, going forward, and to treasure.
And just to say hi to Dennis, it's been a long time, my friend. Sort of one of my former university friends is sort of watching, which is wonderful.
That's nice.
I'm watching all the way from Lagos. So.
Lagos. I'm not sure you have a glass of our wine in front of you then, and we haven't quite managed to sort out distribution to Lagos just yet. So I don't know, is anybody sharing the comments? I think a lot of you are, thank you, drinking our 2016 Chardonnay. We did see a number of people purchase the celebration pack, which included the 17. I hope those of you that did received it in time. And Australia Post are obviously a little bit under pressure with the current times we're in. Is anybody, let me know in the comments if anybody's drinking the 17, because I was going to ask, which one, dare I ask, which one do you prefer? Which one do you prefer? They're both so wonderful.
Well, I'm going to have to finish the 16 so I can try the 17, I think.
It's really hard.
So just, we've spoken about sort of what the lovely characteristics of Margaret River Chardonnay, and in particular Passel Estate Chardonnay. But one of the questions that came up is what you would drink this with in terms of the food pairing. And I think probably Chardonnay would be number one. So yeah, definitely drink it with Chardonnay. But because of it does have those lovely creamy notes to it that you get from
both of them. Yeah.
Both of them you're getting from really from the varietal, but also from the limited Malo and from the oak as well. It does go really well with
everything.
with food that is similarly creamy. I mean, so butter-based dish is a perfect example. I would say sort of my favourite, if you like, midweek meal with Chardonnay would be a lovely lemon roast chicken, lemon garlic roast chicken. It just seems to have that sort of that lovely complementary flavours to it, but equally with a buttery pasta. Possibly maybe have some sort of porcinis or something like that in there. I use a lot of, when I cook, I use a lot of zests from limes and lemons. I find that really goes well if you sort of put it into a butter sauce at the end and allow the natural oils of the citrus to come out. That goes really well with Chardonnay.
Yeah,
so a buttery sort of lemony zest, parsley butter sauce for pasta, absolutely outstanding with Chardonnay.
I think also this is really good actually with dessert. If you've got a lovely, I don't know, a rhubarb crumble or a stone fruit sort of beautiful puddingy dish, a nice glass of this Chardonnay is just the perfect, perfect pairing, I think, with that. I saw another question from David. Hi again, David. So he's asking, when do we think these vintages will be at their best? That's a really hard question, because obviously one of the wonderful things about wine is that they do continue to grow and develop their personalities, and it's so exciting if you have enough to lace them down a little bit and open them periodically to see how they're developing. We've watched or tasted this 16 get bigger with age. And the 17 is our new release, but of course a lot of people in Margaret River are coming to the end of their 18 vintage and even rolling out their 19. So these are already relatively well-aged wines in bottle. Comfortably, they can go another 5 or so years, probably maybe even up to 10, depending on how you like your Chardonnay. That if you did have the two in front of you, you'd notice that the 17, with it being a bit younger, and possibly also due to those vintage conditions we've been discussing, it's a little bit tighter, a little bit more tight on the minerality in a really good way. It's sort of held together. It hasn't sort of relaxed as fully yet as the 16, and that's something I actually really enjoy. So I quite enjoy these wines when they're at this sort of this age, when they're still slightly held together. They haven't fully sort of relaxed their belt and yawned yet.
Yeah.
But there is still a big journey to go, and it depends. I mean, I was asking Barry what's his favourite. He's not prepared to say so, and it's very hard because they're both so divine. I think because of what I've just said, I really think the 17 at the moment is my favourite because I like it, that style. I like it when you can see where it's going. You've got a hint of where it's going, but it's still sort of held together well and structured and sort of taut. But this 16, oh my goodness, you sit down, you have a lovely meal, or you just sit down after a long day and you want to have a really relaxing glass of wine, you have to reach for the 16 because all that relaxation is right there in the glass and it's going to just get more and more relaxed.
And it is, I mean, the 16 is, we know from when we were in the tasting room, it's one of the most popular wines that we've ever produced. It's people absolutely love the 16.
Yes.
And
but we've only produced, I mean, since we started producing in 2015, there's some context there. We've only produced 3 Chardonnays so far, I guess. And the 15 is still really lovely, by the way. We have a little stash of that here.
Yeah.
And we've been drinking that too recently. Really, also really beautiful. But this is, I would say, so David, I would say the 16 is really hitting its stride, but it's got a long journey ahead of itself. 17 is probably a little bit younger. If you like the big Burgundian style, you might enjoy it even more in a year or so. But it's just delicious right now.
And then looking forward, hopefully to the 2021 vintage. That
don't make promises. We think. We hope.
Fingers crossed.
Obviously, whatever Mother Nature sends us, really.
Coming into the Lot 71 reserve portfolio will be a Chardonnay, and it's very likely, but again, it just depends on what Mother Nature delivers.
It has to be the right.
That particular year is what we would like it to be is actually a mix of the Dijon 95 and the Gingin, and see what we can sort of produce. Again, balance is the word that Brice would use and Remy would use. So, but with all of our reserves, obviously we're looking to use the very best fruit to produce something that's outstanding. A
really interesting comment here from Richard, who very kindly popped into the cellar door today to pick up his bottle of Chardonnay. Thank you so much. He's saying, did we model our Chardonnay on any other producer in the region? And I think the answer is no. If we modelled our Chardonnay on any producer, it was probably someone in Montrachet. But having said that, there is, of course, a style, a very Montrachet-esque style in Margaret River that we absolutely love, and there are some other producers that make exquisite versions of this Chardonnay that we adore. And so when we were sitting down with Bruce and Remy at the very get-go and talking about our ambitions and our fruit, it was very clear that we were looking for that stylistically. A little bit of secondary fermentation, the malolactic, the big rounded fruit flavors, but still with that minerality at the core and structured. So we didn't. I still couldn't really identify another producer that we've modelled this on, but there's a style, of course, that we're approaching. And what we really are hoping is that we're creating very distinctive Passel Estate wines. We want you to be able to taste this and taste another really beautiful Chardonnay from a wonderful producer in Margaret River. And let's face it, we are spoiled for choice. There are some incredible Margaret River Chardonnay producers. But what we really hope is that you would taste this and say, oh, that's Passel Estate. That's their fruit. That's their vineyard that we can taste in that glass. So I don't know if that answers your question. Obviously, Bruce also makes a Chardonnay under his own label. In fact, he makes about 3 different Chardonnays under his own label. So right there, he's got a sort of stylistic variation going on. I'm sure there are lots of similarities with some of the lovely producers of Chardonnay in the region, but we certainly haven't modelled it on somebody else in Margaret River.
And I think that it comes back to a philosophy that we've had, and it very much drives the wine making side of Passel Estate more than anything else, which is that everything is done according to producing the absolutely best wine that we can out of the fruit that we have on any given year. We're blessed with an incredible climate, with incredible soil, and with an incredibly consistent climate in Margaret River, which is incredibly close in many ways to Burgundy and to Bordeaux.
Well, with that maritime.
But with that maritime sort of climate. But we inevitably have to fine-tune. A great example between these 2 Chardonnays is that there is a slightly higher alcohol content on the 17 to the 16. And that was really because the grapes stayed out there a little longer to soften the acids and to develop the fruit before it was harvested in 17. Whereas in 16 we were able to bring it off. That happened sooner. Yeah. So every year is different.
It's romantic,
and that's part of the joy of it. But ultimately, we at the end of the process every year, we're getting close to the sort of or a very similar style of wine. But there are variances every year, and that's one of the beauties, isn't it, of any kind of tasting wine, of making wine, is that no year is the same.
No, and it is romantic. Although every time I say that to Andy Ferreira, our wonderful viticulturist and farmer, he growls at me because he doesn't think it's romantic. It's obviously very stressful if we've got rains and other things, but it is romantic. We are applying a high degree of discipline and science to this process, but there's also a huge amount that's completely out of our control, which is Mother Nature, the terroir, the grapes, and we really want that to speak. We want to be very respectful of that. It goes to the whole sort of philosophy of Passel Estate on a wider level, the conservation and sustainability ethos that those of you that know us will be familiar with. So it's very exciting. I just saw another really exciting comment which I want to pass on, which is and it's scrolled up, but somebody was asking me, I think it was David, forgive me if it was somebody else, I'm trying to sort of look at the camera and say hi to you guys and read comments all at the same time.
And drink wine.
Somebody was saying, and drink wine, and I'm getting it low. Somebody was saying, they would define this characteristically Willy Abrupt. Now, there's a sort of unofficial sub-region discussion going on in Margaret River, as many of you will know. Some of the big well-known producers, such as Lewin, are in Warcliffe, and then a lot of the big well-known Cabernet Sauvignon producers are Willy Abrupt. We are actually right on the border, David, and technically we're on the Warcliffe side of it. But if it's unofficial, this of course, but the border that is being proposed is Ellenbrook Road, which runs right alongside our vineyard, and so we are right smack in the middle. So I don't know. I think it's just absolutely Margaret River classic, central. I don't know that you can necessarily.
I think the sort of we're still within that William Valley, certainly where we are. I think in terms of our reds,
we're technically on the walk.
It's ever so slightly, probably over the course of a growing season, and there's a lot of days in a growing season slightly warmer than further deeper down in the valley, and that's fantastic for the reds. In terms of, I think our Cabernets in particular, we benefit from that. Maybe that extra sort of 0 point whatever it is degree on a daily basis, in terms of being able to produce the wonderful fruit.
There are so many microclimates even within these unofficial subregions
Yes,
as well.
yeah.
I think it's a little bit tricky to try and assign too much. I just David's keeping in the. Thank you for the comments. I'm loving the comments. No, can I just be very clear in response to David's comment? It is not my face on the label. I have to say, when we were designing this label, it's Mother Nature, obviously. You know, it's got the possums that we rescue and rehabilitate at the vineyard. It's got all the lovely southwest nature in there. There is a cello in there, which is a reference to me. As some of you know, I'm a cellist. There's a surfboard, because Barry is... Are you a surfer or a grommet?
A grommet.
A grommet. He's trying to surf. He's learning to surf. So there are those little Easter eggs, if you like. But that is definitely not me. And I must say, David, when I first saw the first illustration, she looked far too much like Charlize Theron, who is Barry's absolute pin-up. And I had to insist that Mother Nature was aged a little bit. So, yeah, no, not me at all. But hopefully a label that tells our whole story and resonates with what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, yeah, I mean, it's so much. I mean, it seemed to be the perfect representation of so much of what the estate represents in terms of conservation, in terms of sanctuary, and in terms of purity, as much as anything. It's you know, we're the custodians of an absolutely amazing little piece of Margaret River that has some amazing vines and incredible soils and incredible climate, and produces this amazing fruit.
And amazing bushland with a beautiful ecosystem, which, you know, again, if you're following us, you'll know that we're doing some planting. Unfortunately, we've had to cancel some of the events around that because of COVID, but we do a lot of planting and regeneration of the bushland. We've literally built soft release enclosures, so these critically endangered western ringtail possums can be gently reintroduced, and we've had some real success there. We've spotted babies, we've spotted new drays. You know, all of that is something we're very blessed with this beautiful piece of property, and we want all of that to be reflected in the story.
It's been a wonderful year for us on conservation, and a huge amount of credit to our Tasty Moon manager, Sandy Wilson, on that. But not alone, and Chris as well. We have a number of people who help on the conservation and are dedicated to doing it, and
great volunteers.
And I think that this year has been a bit of a breakthrough year in terms of certainly the possum program, in terms of the fact that the releases that we've had seem to have stayed around and seem to have built little homes of their own in the trees around the tasting room, and that's very exciting for us.
Now, look, I'm very conscious. I was once told 18 minutes is the optimal time. We've been going on for half an hour, but you're still asking questions, so I'm very happy to keep answering them. Richard, if we could try Chardonnay from any other vineyard in the world post-COVID, where would it be? Oh my goodness, that's really tough. Barry, you have to answer that first. We were very lucky. You answer it first when I'm still talking. Sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm used to that.
We were very, very lucky. Just before COVID, we were in South Africa. Barry, as some of you will know, was born in South Africa in the Cape Winelands, so he has this in his blood. And we went back, and it was sort of home from home, visiting Franschhoek and the surrounding region. And we did actually taste some really fine.
Yeah, there was
Chardonnay.
amazing. There was an amazing estate there, which was actually one of the winemakers from Merceau had bought a small vineyard with Chardonnay in Franschhoek, and was making essentially a harvest or a vintage down in down in Cape Town, and one in Burgundy each year, and it's called Topiary.
Highly recommended.
And it is absolutely outstanding. Very made obviously to Franschhoek's strengths as in terms of climate, in terms of soils, but producing absolutely beautiful Chardonnay.
Yeah, mineral, but big, really beautiful.
And
we
the
carried a
Franschhoek,
lot back.
And I have to say, for me, the Franschhoek Valley has a very special place in my heart. It's close to where I grew up. I used to go there as a child, but it is one of the most beautiful places on the planet. Amazing restaurants, amazing wines, but Topiary is worth a visit, I would say, if you're ever there.
Perhaps not the response you would have expected, but one that we recently had the pleasure of enjoying. Is there anything other one on our hit list? I mean, obviously France, but
obviously the whole of Merceau and Chassagne and Montrachet and Beaune, probably.
But also there's some really beautiful Chardonnays across other wine regions of Australia, and some of the cooler climates as well. Producing different styles, but there's so much to discover out there. And I'm so glad that the community at large has moved on from this whole anything but Chardonnay nonsense that developed as a result of some of the
Yeah.
some sort of commercially minded estates perhaps taking a different approach to their winemaking than was wise. So people are now really discovering the complexity and the beauty of this varietal.
I mean, the reality is that, however, we produce wine make wine in a region that is justifiably famous for Chardonnay, and you would struggle, I think, outside of Burgundy, to find a greater concentration of great Chardonnay producers anywhere in the world.
Yeah, there are some beautiful ones out there, as you all know, and hopefully some of you are drinking. I think we probably should wrap it up because we've been more than half an hour, but this has been really good fun, and I have to say, really enjoying my 2017
second glass of 2017.
So thank you again. We're really so honoured that you're tuning in and chatting with us, and hopefully we're getting slightly better each week. And we're, as you will also, many of you either notice or already know, we're currently locked down in Singapore. We're desperate to get back to Vineyard and Margaret River, and hopefully that can happen sooner rather than later, and we can do some of these live streams from the estate. But in the meantime, we do have our celebration of Chardonnay. It's a 6-pack, 3 of the 16s, 3 of the 17s. Currently, the only way to buy the 17s available online, or if you just want to send me an email, I can always help you out, wendy@passelestate.com. And also watch this space because we will be rolling to the vintage and releasing the 2017 Chardonnay very soon. Perhaps we'll do it in conjunction, if we're very lucky, with reopening the tasting room for tastings. And Christo, thank you, has just come in from a surf. Brilliant. You've earned your Chardonnay, Christo. So,
lucky man, Christo.
Very lucky man. And thank you, all of you, again, for joining. Sorry, Christo, we are about to wrap up, but thank you so much for joining, and I hope you've got a glass of Chardonnay in hand to enjoy.
Post-surf.
And look, any other questions coming? I will now go online and try and make sure I've answered everything that you asked that we forgot to or didn't notice while we were busy trying to juggle cameras and glasses of wine and chat. And we will see you again in a week or two for our next wine chat, when we'll be tasting another one of our reds, possibly one of our
possibly the reserves.
I think almost certainly one of our Lot 71 reserves. So cheers, everybody. Happy International Chardonnay Day.
Thank you for joining us.
Have a lovely evening. Enjoy the
Happy
drink.
Chardonnay Day.
And thanks so much for tuning in.